Lead by inspiring. Lead by experience. Lead by example. Lead by. The Leadership Podcast brought to you by Ezeni. My name is Matt Stankham and I'm your host, bringing you thought-provoking, inspirational chat every month. Hear from leaders, business owners, coaches and subject matter experts from across a variety of industries. So however you consume your podcasts, turn up the volume, relax, and above all, enjoy this month's guest.
Hello, and we're back. It's the start of season 2, and we have an incredible lineup of guests for you. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. And if you're a loyal follower, well, we really appreciate your support. As you'll have seen in the title, we have a big name for the first episode of the season. Recorded at the start of September, Managing Director of Dacia UK, Luke Broad, joins me to share how his career grew within the Renault Group in a very, very short space of time. As a self-confessed petrolhead, Luke knows all about high performance and what it takes to supercharge his teams. Dacia's latest product portfolio is game-changing and will undoubtedly be hugely successful. Getting the great products and services into the hands of the customer takes passion, commitment, and a go-getter attitude. And Luke is definitely leading the way with a hands-on approach, inspired leadership style, and a culture that encourages every voice to be heard.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here at Milton Keynes, and I'm lucky enough today to be joined by Luke Broad, a name that you will hopefully know of in the automotive space, and he's a very accomplished individual who's here to talk all about leadership. So I'm going to hand straight over to Luke to talk about his role, his background, and let's get into the leadership chat that is Lead By from Ezeni.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I've never been described as an accomplished individual before, so that's great.
Well, I've read your LinkedIn profile. I've had some things shared with me, and you definitely fit the bill, Luke.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot.
So talk to me about your career, because I've done a bit of research. Your colleagues have kindly shared some information with us as well as part of the sort of research phases. You have a phenomenal career, and in a very short space of time as well. You know, very, very short space of time, you've achieved so much. So talk to me about that.
So I'm Luke Broad. I'm on the board of Renault Group UK, and I'm the brand director for Dacia, which is for me incredibly exciting. I love the brand. I love what it stands for, and maybe we'll get into that later. But I guess a plotted history of my career at my core. I'm a huge petrol head, like we were discussing earlier, and what attracted me to the automotive industry and Renault Group was cars and all of the excitement, the noise that comes with that. And with my university money, I bought myself a Clio Renault Sport 182, spent all of that doing track days and all the stupid things you do with cars when you are young, and got speaking at the time to the PR director of Renault Group, who slowly but surely sort of convinced me into exploring careers with the group. And to cut a long story short, many roles across sales, marketing brand, marketing product, a bit of a stint in a dealer network as well. And I'm now heading up the Dacia brand in the UK. But the thing that really drives me is the product and the industry,
Yeah, I mean, that brand in itself is phenomenal right now. So the timing must be brilliant for you, where you're taking that next elevated step and with a brand that's got so much on offer.
Yeah, I mean, what is really unique, I think, about Dacia is everyone who works in the organisation, and I'm not just talking, UK with my team, but also across Paris, Romania, the whole world. Everyone is so aligned on the mission, what we're all about, and you could ask anybody in the organisation, what is Dacia? And you will get the same speech from every individual, whether they're in the dealership, whether they're in the factories, whether they're in my team. And what we say about Dacia is it's the best value for money brand, not cheap, value for money, that constantly redefines the essentials. And I really love this notion of essentiality, because you know what the industry is like and you know what life is like in general. It's always more consumerism, whereas what Dacia does is comes along and say, well, what is essential? Not basic, Apple CarPlay for me is essential, but it's not basic. So we really get into a lot of detail with our products, our servicing, our marketing, and ask the question, what is essential? Because ultimately we want to simplify our customers' lives. It also complexifies our lives, to be honest, but that's a cost of simplifying the lives of our customers. But the brand's on a real journey, and the volumes have been growing every single year since 2013 when we launched.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some really great products, and it just keeps on coming. I've seen the release of obviously Spring, massive for you guys, and then you've got new Duster coming along. Some really great looking design in there as well, which is really attractive. And with no disrespect here intended, you've come a long way in the terms of the look, functionality, and overall package that comes with your product. What's the sort of ambitions with people and the people that lead from the corporate offices and what the message that goes out? Has that changed? Are you getting a diverse type of people, an attraction to Dacia now?
Yeah, so to your first point, the brand has evolved massively, right? We launched in the UK 11 years ago now. The price of a Sandero 11 years ago was going on $6,000, 5,995 was the launching price. Yeah. But if all you talk about is the price of your product, you reach a ceiling, right? And there comes a point where people are almost a bit questioning, what's wrong with it? Why is it that price? The reason that Dacia is so affordable is because the brand is super clever with how we engineer the thing. And the brand is now about incredibly strong design, the features that you need and nothing that you don't. And also just doing what it says on the tin, we don't build cars to have screens everywhere and holograms on the screen and all of this stuff. That's nonsense. We build cars that people use and live with and are easy to use. And to answer your question about, more broadly, the organisation, one of the really key things with Dacia is we don't have thousands and thousands of people within the organisation, right? I mean, to give you some examples, in my team in the UK, there's 9 of us in total looking after a brand that's going to be delivering, 30,000 plus cars and so on,
That's incredible.
And even in the corporate team, the teams are small. So the agility side of things is great because you don't have the people. So there's no room for egos. You've just got to take decisions and you can take them quick. And also it means everybody knows what everybody else is up to. So it's super efficient,
Yeah, and decisions happen quickly because of that agility and the size you are. Is that something you want to keep at the core of that organisation? Is it something you want to keep the levels low so that you can progress?
Yeah, I mean, we will put people where we need people because as a brand grows, you do need more people. But for sure, I really want to keep the essence of what we have today, which is a core group of people who are very close as a team. We're very tight-knit, like Charlie, who works in our PR department, he knows exactly what Graham, who works in marketing, is doing. They know each other's jobs inside and out. And what that means is you can create some real magic between those two business areas. And some other examples, sales and product, they're super knitted. So we want to keep it small. We want to keep it agile because I feel as though if you start adding more people, you add layers, you add committees, you have approval processes that are perhaps sometimes longer than they need to be, So we take the view in the UK that less is more. Yeah.
So let's go back to you in your youth. We were talking off camera. You're a passionate petrol head, which is an interesting term in itself in today's modern world. And I have this dilemma myself. It's a bit of an oxymoron, really, as I drive an EV. But as a petrol head, someone passionate about cars and joining the industry, what did your journey look like from leaving school, and what were those ambitions that were really clear in your mind?
I mean, it's the sentence you just said is interesting because actually my ambitions were not clear at all. I always had a passion for business. I loved, how would you set up a business? How do you manage the business? What does the financial side of that look like? And I always had a huge passion for that. In tandem, you've mentioned a huge passion for anything with 4 wheels, engines, and as you said quite rightly, that's evolving very quickly, as I'm sure we'll come on to. But over the course of leaving college and university, I sort of started to connect the dots that the automotive industry ticks all of those boxes, and even more actually, because it's got so many facets to it. You've got sales, marketing, the after-sale side of things that comes with all of that. You've also got engineering, product development in the future. There's just so much you can do within the industry that I hadn't initially appreciated. And as soon as I started discovering these things from the PR director at the time, a guy called Jeremy Townsend, who's very famous within the industry, I'm sure, it just really ignited that passion for me. And here I am, what's that, 15, 16 years later.
Yeah. So you've done, was it 10, 11 years with Renault Group?
I think I'm coming on for 11, 12 years, yeah.
Yeah.
What's that? 2011 I joined
Yeah.
Renault Group, yeah. So what's that? 12 years, I think, yeah.
Yeah. In excess of a decade, which
Yeah.
is still phenomenal, really, for the seat you hold right now. So as essentially managing director of Dacia UK, that is an incredible achievement. And from a beginning where you didn't know what you were necessarily going to do with your career, but you studied business through university.
Yeah, I did business and enterprise management. So
Yeah.
again, back to that, entrepreneurship, setting up companies,
Yeah.
managing change, and all of that side of things.
Yeah, and in terms of leadership, because obviously that's a huge part of the role you hold now, what sort of studies have you done, or what do you do in terms of educating yourself to stay relevant as a great leader?
So I am obsessive with reading, and I am also obsessive with YouTube. So, in my spare time, I'm always getting stuck down YouTube rabbit holes, and also podcasts. I find, because I spend a lot of time in the car, traveling to retailers and between our dealerships. So I spend a lot of time investing in increasing my knowledge on leadership, because everybody can learn new things. But also I use that time to learn more about wider industry trends, and also things that aren't anything to do with automotive that we can as a team in Dacia UK apply within the business. And AI is a huge buzzword at the minute, and 2 years ago I probably wouldn't be able to tell you what AI is, but it's become such a huge thing now with the rise of ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Bod, and all that stuff.
Which is becoming integrated into certain brands as well, isn't it? So the fact that now features in the infotainment and the UX in a car is something I could never have perceived or to become reality when I started out in the industry in the very beginning of the millennium. So I go far enough back that the adverts in the cars were sold on were in the paper. They weren't on the websites.
I remember that.
And that was the beginning of my career in the industry. So to come this far, it is incredible.
Yeah.
But the demand from the customer upon the retailer and the brands now is huge, because we've got this movement naturally towards electrification. We have things that need to be on demand because we're used to it, like you've described, podcasts, YouTube, all that stuff. So customers are now more demanding than they've ever been before, which rightfully so, because they're spending lots of money and the world is a different place. Yeah. But when you've got to have people connected to that and information connected to that, it takes a certain type of person and an attitude to learning, so that the people on the front line that are selling have the necessary skills. So is there a correlation between the message, the values that come from Dacia UK, from your seat, right down to retail? Is there a common theme that you want to see in every retailer group that transcends?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our reason to be is ultimately to sell cars and to look after our customers, and actually to look after customers is our main reason, because without them you don't sell cars. But training our retailer network on all of these new technologies, new developments. I mean, a car is a complex thing. If you break it down, fine, they've got 4 wheels and a steering wheel. But more and more, they're becoming more complicated things, particularly with European legislation mandating certain ADAS features, which are great. They add value to customers' lives and all of that good stuff. But they are and can be quite complicated. So it's our role as a manufacturer to make that as simple as possible to understand for our retailers, so that they can explain that in a simple and easy to understand way for our customers. I mean, with Dacia specifically, I've got a bit of a gift in that area, because innately our products are much more simpler, on the basis that we don't fit lots of gadgets and gizmos and complex things that people have to spend time and energy understanding how to use. But we do and are increasingly fitting more complicated things to our cars because the legislation requires us to do so. And we have to explain that to our teams in a very, very Dacia way, which is simple, clear, and easy to understand. Otherwise, they're lost, customers lost. It becomes a real nightmare,
Yeah, and you were saying at the start that whilst it appears simple to the customer, there's huge amounts of work and preparation behind the scenes at brand level where you sit. And so to get that simple, clear message across? What type of leadership style do you need to have, even though you have a small but an agile team? What do you need to have as an attribute or attributes to deliver that?
I think embodying the brand is a big one. As a leader of the brand, and again for me that's easy because I'm my personality, who I am, is quite naturally aligned to Dacia, but also showing and acting how you expect the team to act.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is when you're asking for presentations and analyses on certain things, for me it's okay if they come with a one slide PowerPoint with loads of messy slides and just like no, as long as the story's clear, I'm good. What I'm not interested in them doing is spending 4 weeks creating the most pretty PowerPoint with lots of jazzy things. No, we haven't got the time to do that. One slide is good, tables thrown all over the place, simple story and messaging is good. And what I try to do with them is embody that, act that, show that, and then the logic there is that they will do that backwards.
Yes. You're looking keenly at Charlie, who's, for those that are watching, he's outside the room, and Charlie looks after the brand PR and communications, right?
Yeah.
So he's sat out there at the moment, nodding and smiling. Hopefully, I can't see Charlie, but you're looking for that validation. So that brings me to a really great question, actually, because I've had some preparation from Charlie very kindly, and we were talking about your attributes. And again, as a very accomplished person, and with the personality you have, you're very grounded.
Yeah.
You're very likable individual because you speak your mind, but you're also very, very grounded. Thinking about that in terms of your team and the connected Renault Group, what would people say about you? How would they describe you? Because I've got some notes here that are direct from those people. It's an interesting comparison.
I hate these types of questions.
They're always a bit of a stitch up, really, aren't they?
Yeah, a real stitch up. But what I hope they will say about me is that I like to think I'm really good at communicating complex topics in a really simple way. I mean, the industry today, it's always been complicated, right? You spent lots of time in it, but now more than ever, you have to be up to speed with AI, legislation that's coming in the next 4 years, politics. The thing is a real challenge to keep abreast of. I like to think that I can take those topics and communicate them in a very, very simple way. I would hope that they say that I don't have an ego. And for me, that's really important because, approaching topics with humility, being clear about what you don't know, and actually employing experts who do know and leaning on that expertise. For me, I'm quite happy to look stupid in meetings because I've got people in the team who are experts on those topics, So clear, communicating complex topics, ego-free, or maybe not totally ego-free. We've all got an ego, but mainly ego-free. And I also like to think that they're very clear with where they sit in the bigger picture. Because, Renault Group is a huge organisation. Dacia is a smaller organisation within Renault Group. But for me, it's important that each of them understand, well, I do this role, I'm doing this activity. What does that mean for this year, next year, and the next 5 years, Because having that vision of where are we as a team, what is our mission, and what are we doing to get there? I like to think I'm quite good at showing that, pointing that out, and making sure they're on that trajectory.
Is that, before I reveal some of the answers that have been submitted, I'll play the game show host here.
Okay.
Is it important for you to have that validation, that feedback mechanism that makes you appreciate what others are thinking and feeling?
Yeah, it is, because I'm not one of these guys who will go into a meeting and say, right, this is how we're doing things. Actually, my preference is to hear from the topic experts, try and understand that myself, and see how I feel that will fit into the future and even to the short term, depending on what we're talking about. But I'm definitely not one of these things not one of these people who are, this is how it's going to do, it's my way or the highway. And with the team, we have really interesting discussions about short-term and long-term topics that by the end of the discussion, I've totally changed my mind on, because they're either super good at convincing me and making me change my mind, or actually I like to think it's more I'm receptive to new ways of thinking and adapting that thinking, which honestly I think today you have to be. You can't know everything. the thing is just so complicated. You have to rely on your team members, and you have to have that two-way dialogue with the subject matter experts.
I think it can be a huge weight on your shoulders in your role if you accept all the responsibility and you carry an ego, because then it's only your view, it's only your decisions, and that can take its toll on anybody. And in today's world, we're under more pressure, more fire, and mental health is a big problem. We've talked about it in another podcast. It has huge financial impact to businesses, but huge impact to people and their ability to work. So I think everything you've said is really important, and it creates a culture that people want to be part of. It's a collaborative culture. So let's see what that we have on the scores on the doors, so to speak. So allegedly 5 people were asked these questions, and there are a number of duplicates in here, which is really good news, because that means, again, there's a consistency to your approach. So let's go through these. So straightforward was one of them. Inspiring. Relatable. I can understand, and we've only had short conversations, but I can totally get that. Supportive, visionary, focused, and driven. So those 2 at the end, focused and driven, are interesting, because that's territory in my mind where, again, if the ego is dialed up to 11, that could be very overwhelming, overpowering, because you have focus, you have drive, and you can say, right, it's my way or the highway, as you just identified. So it would seem that you're striking that balance of getting the message across, allowing people to find their own journey, and with a team of 9 that the people that you said earlier all have to know each other's roles, and that interaction with one another. That's a really unstoppable force. That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, was it Steve Jobs who said something like, "Why would you employ good people and tell them what to do?" And,
yes.
I see that a lot in other organisations, and you think it's something I really believe in, and it's always one of those things that I have in the back of my mind. And what I also think is a really strong point of the team within the UK is all of them are more than happy to tell me when I'm talking nonsense. And for me, that sort of psychological safety, being able to speak your mind without fear of being shot in the head, I think that's quite, it creates a nice working environment. We all hold each other to account, we're all, right, we're going to do this, okay, you go away and do it. But having that safe space to sometimes make mistakes, because you have to take risks sometimes, right, to have them pay off. But having that safe environment to speak your mind, to call me out when they're like, I'm not sure that's quite right. I think that says a lot about the team.
It says a lot about the team. It says a lot about you. And as you identified, many organisations don't necessarily carry those values, and that works for them. But everything we talked about with the essence of Dacia and the brand values, it sounds like it's a marriage that works really well. And if it's your values, then you've done an incredible job of making them everybody's values, so that it's become cultural, which is really clever.
Yeah, I think so. And to add to that, I'll talk about our CEO is a chap called Denny Laveau. He's another guy who embodies the brand. He's one of these. He doesn't want reams of PowerPoint, and he's CEO level, looking after 700,000 cars per year. He's very straightforward, to the point, and because of that, all of the teams within Paris and the other countries, they'll say, oh, well, the CEO's like that, everybody can be like that. And it's the same with us in my team. I behave in that way. And it has a trickle down effect.
Yeah, and again, that straightforward nature, you're getting things done. You're moving the products miles ahead quickly because of that tenacious view that everybody has, which is incredible. So again, let's talk about you and some specifics. We've just mentioned about feedback. It's important for you to get that information, a two-way street, so that people can keep you grounded and also help you feed information. Are there days that are really difficult, though, in your role, where you almost have to do that typical, stereotypical, shut a door as an MD in an office, have your time? How do you deal with that, and what sort of things do you go through on a day-to-day basis?
Well, to be honest, with the team, I don't really lock myself in an office and do that. If I really thrive on challenges and trying to find ways around them. And again, the beauty of having a really strong team around you is you don't have to do that, because you can say, right, we've got this problem, let's go and look at it together. So I would say it is stereotypical, but I don't do it at all. No, I don't do it. If we've got something we need to sort out, we jump in a room and sort it out, and it's done quite quickly usually.
Yeah, and again, that learning, that experience that you're now delivering, is that self-made, or did you hear on podcasts, watch on videos that actually that was the right way to do it? How did you come to find that was a winning recipe?
I think it's a culmination of things. It's listening to different podcasts, videos, and things like that. But also, I think it's just how I've always worked. I mean, I was a zone manager for an area of 25 dealers for 4 years.
Yeah.
And even with our retailers, if there was a problem with that particular retail, it wouldn't be, oh, well, let's organise a meeting, have a big review, do this, that, the other. It'd be, no, we'll jump in the car, we'll lock ourselves in a room for 2 hours and we'll sort it out. And it's just something that I've always done, and I've always found it's had the most effective results,
Yeah.
We're not poets, we just want to get things done, Execution is key, I think.
I found it really interesting that in my mind, it's a no-nonsense approach. It's just getting on with the job and not having all these barriers and red tape that typically forms in big corporates that have lots of overheads and lots of people. So I think it's really interesting. And I think what I would love to just delve into before we take a short break is sharing some of the things that are important to you that you've learned for the inspiring or future leaders. So what would you describe as invaluable bits of information or attributes that need to be carried into a leadership role today?
I think the main one for me is just accept that you don't know everything, I mean, as I personally working my way up through the organisation, my first management role, I was like, I need to know everything. But actually, as I've spent more time in various different positions in the company, you can never do that. And you have to accept that, otherwise you're going to just tie yourselves in knots. You don't have to be the guy or the girl. You have really great people around you to support you with that. So that's the first thing, just accept, you're not going to know everything. And with that means you have to be quite humble, and it's a really fine balance to have, because you have to be a leader. You have to set the direction. You have to say, this is what I want to do with the brand in the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. But also you have to support the team along that in a very humble way. So it's almost around, well, there's the top of the mountain. How you get there's some guide rails. But broadly, I'm not too bothered, as long as we get there in the right way, it's all good. If you want to go up there with a jetpack, no probs. If you want to go up there walking, no probs. So that's the other thing that I would say, really stay grounded, down to earth. And then the third thing is you always need to stay curious. I've mentioned it already, but the world, particularly within automotive, is moving so quick. You've got to keep so informed in what is going on. Otherwise, it's very easy to become out of date with what's happening,
Yeah, and you were saying earlier, which is a very common approach, viewing the market, viewing the industry in general tends to be something that is part of a daily routine for people at your level. And naturally, because you want to stay curious and as you describe, and informed of what's happening almost on a minute-by-minute basis, because it can unfold that quickly in the automotive space because of regulations and legislation. So on that, what I'd like to do after we take a break is let's talk a little bit about Dacia in today's world, which is moving towards full electrification or electrified product, and what types of people and leadership are required now and how you'll manage that environment, and obviously the demand that's put upon you as the person that's in charge of all of that. So let's take a short break and then we'll pick up from where we left off.
Great.
Thanks, Luke.
Hey there. 2024 is set to be a big year for podcast growth. With recent years seeing between 10 and 20% year-on-year market growth, listeners today love the convenience of being able to catch up on their favourite topics, feeling like they're sat alongside the presenters. Podcasts and now even video podcasts offer a unique and almost intimate quality that allows devoted audiences to listen along whilst they travel, work out, rest in bed, or listen along in the car. Spotify and Apple Music remain the top providers for people's casts, but with video now taking a slice of the pie, some are now even checking in via YouTube, LinkedIn, or other social platforms.
If you're considering how you can share key messages with your customers, followers, or even employees and colleagues, a punchy podcast could be a great way to allow people to absorb your content at a time that's convenient to them, perhaps even times which are considered dead time, like commuting. That's where Ignition could help you. We can help formulate a great storytelling moment, orchestrate inspired conversational chat that the world could enjoy. There are rumoured to be in excess of 500 million listeners of podcasts in 2024, with individuals set to consume around 7 to 10 hours of audio content a week. So whether you're thinking about sharing your experience, discussing market trends, shouting about your latest product update, or simply offering some casual skills training, our content writers can help you formulate a plan for the year, co-write episodes with you, produce and edit your content, and help you to understand your audience and analytics. So, let's help you shout from the rooftops. Just remember, your voice could be heard the world over.
Well, welcome back, Luke. We're going to pick up where we left off. We've got some caffeine in the system now, which is an interesting topic in itself because there's lots of different ways that people stay energized and have different routines. And just on a small tangent quickly, have you got any health benefits, techniques that you use as a high performer that keeps you on top form?
Running. Yeah, running. I do lots of running, both on the road and trail running as well, in forests and things like this. My distance is 10 kilometers though. I'm not one of these lunatics who are running, 100 kilometers every weekend. But I just find it helps, clear my mind, set my priorities, and of course keep me mentally fit as well. It helps a lot. Yeah.
Yes, and we just released an episode with Dr. John Finn. I reference him quite a lot in our podcast series because we use a lot of the habit mechanic methodology in our leadership program. And fueling the brain is a crucial part to high performance and great leadership. So it's not just the information we take on, the actual fuel, the energy we put into our bodies. So what we drink, what we eat naturally has a huge impact. So the omega-3s and 6s and fatty acids and the oils that we use make a massive difference to the way our brain performs. And one of the things that I found profound, and I don't know why I hadn't considered this before, is water. And I think we're all guilty of not drinking enough water. I've spent my career running from meetings to meetings or customers to customers and neglecting the basic thing that my body needs, which is water. And therefore, at night, struggled with sleeping and just generally the detrimental effect of not drinking has a huge impact the next day on performance.
Yeah, it's mad though, isn't it? Because isn't it 3 litres of water you're meant to drink a day?
2 to 3 litres, yeah. So
it's a lot of water.
It's quite a lot, and there's these products out there that now you can see how much you've drunk by the measurements on the bottle and all those things. You get apps to remind you to drink this stuff. But taking this on a small tangent there. It is interesting to understand what people's routines are and their habits, because again, in the habit creation of the habit mechanic, this is a foundation to high performance. The diet, exercise, and sleep routines that high performance leaders have is the catalyst to great things, no doubt. So your running will have a huge part of keeping your mind active, allowing you probably to process. So I guess when you're running, you can compartmentalize work, home life, maybe listen to a podcast, stay curious, as you said earlier, listen to information and gather thoughts. Yeah. So
it also helps me problem solve, to be honest, because the amount of times that I've been out there, I've had a run, you're stewing on a problem as you're going, and by the end of it, you're like, oh, actually, you've come out of that with a mental to-do list and a way forward. So it helps immensely, to be honest.
Do you ever step away from the office when you're actually at head office? Do you step out for a quick walk, gather your thoughts?
Yeah, and we can't always do it, but as a team, we try and have half hour away from the desk, 45 minutes away from the desk,
right,
and just have a lunch and talk about stuff that's not work. Yeah. And again, because you're doing that, you come back after lunch and it's like, oh, okay, I can see a way forwards now. So we can't always do it because work gets in the way, but we try and take time away from the desk because it unblocks a lot of creativity blocks.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking from our listeners, viewers' perspective, I think what you've just said is really important, that you are working together as a tight-knit community to figure out your problems, take some downtime. But maybe the cynics and skeptics out there might say, well, okay, it's easy to do that with a team of 9, 10 people.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, as you said earlier, you're pushing out 30,000 plus vehicles a year. So that's immense amounts of product with responsibility. So there is something in there that is clearly working very well. And I guess that essence could be transported into a much larger organization, maybe on a team level as opposed to company wide.
Yeah.
But I think, again, what you're saying is being in the mix of all those people is what's giving you that idea creation, allowing you to bat things backwards and forwards. And you said earlier, which I thought was really interesting, people are not worried about being honest with you. They can be honest and grounded with you, which I think is unusual, but in a really positive way.
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
well, it's working, isn't it?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the new era. And I've referenced it a few times. You've touched about your product. Electrification is a topic that's not a fad. It's not here for 5 minutes. This is something that as a community, as an automotive leader, you need to be absolutely on top form with legislation, repercussions, circumstances of what you need to push and pull on. And more importantly, the demand from the people. So you've got your own people in the head office, you've got your retailer groups that are connected to that, and then you've got your customers and end users.
Yeah.
So let's just break down what the journey looks like, first of all, at a brand level. So what's happening in Dacia, what the ambitions are, and then let's take that down to another level of, okay, so what's the responsibility on the people, and then how we get that message from you to them. So I'll work my way through that.
It's a lot to break down, yeah.
It is.
Speaking generally, the direction set out by the UK government is incredibly ambitious. It's the most ambitious policy in the world. And the direction of travel isn't going away, as you've said. We need to reduce our consumerism and our impact on the planet, be that from the raw materials that we're digging out of it, and then ultimately in the automotive industry, the stuff that's coming out the back of the exhaust or not exhaust, if you're talking about electric vehicles. Speaking about Dacia specifically, so Dacia is lucky to be part of Renault Group. And because of that, we have the brand of Renault, which is investing massively in R&D on electrification platforms, on technology, on software-defined vehicles, and all of this, super exciting future stuff. And Renault is the leader in EV within Renault Group. Dacia is the follower. That's the sort of setup,
Yeah.
But with that being said, though, we can't say, oh, well, we're Dacia, we don't do, electric powertrains, because of what I've just said. The direction of travel is clear. So with Dacia, we've recently launched the Spring. So Dacia Spring, it's the UK's most affordable electric car, just under £15,000 on the road. So not only is it an affordable EV, it's an affordable car, full stop.
I mean, it's game changing.
Yeah, it's, you know what? I've been fighting to bring this car to the UK now for, I think it's 4 years. And we've just got into the country, left-hand drive French car, so they're here on holiday, right? And we've been driving around in the car as a team, and I sit in the thing, and it just makes you smile. You just sit in this thing like, oh, it's so easy to drive, it looks cool, it's funky, it's good fun to drive. But anyway, we have this car coming, and also because Renault have invested already in hybrid powertrains, electric powertrains. For us at Dacia, it's easy. We just say, oh well, we'll have that powertrain and we'll put it in that car. So that's what we've done, and we've recently launched yesterday our all new Dacia Duster with hybrid powertrain. So we are going in the direction. We're not a leader in that direction. That's the role of the Renault brand.
Yeah.
But the trajectory is clear. But it's tough, particularly within the UK and the ZEV mandate context.
Yeah, the market is tough, and because of the way that I guess the communication from a government level down to the end user has transpired, there has been a lack of confidence over the last couple of years. We saw some highs, and then we saw some very low lows, and then we've had the recovery through used car market, which seems as an industry has really helped boost awareness and give people access to products at a more affordable level. Yeah. But now with the Spring, we're talking about a product that's new, with warranty, with the essential equipment and nothing more, at a really great price. And I love the advertising campaigns that are out there at the moment, proving the point that actually, why would you need any more than what we've got in this box?
Yeah.
It's, it comes out of the factory all ready to be driven, and it's perfect for the circumstances we all live and breathe. And I think, that, again, it goes back to all of the essential essence of what Dacia is about.
Yeah, but what we're really trying to do with this car is democratize EV ownership, right? The average price of an EV today, I think it's at 38,000 pounds. It's in that region.
Yeah.
So EVs are expensive. They're coming down very quickly, by the way, because all the brands are investing and trying to reduce the costs. But generally speaking, EVs are expensive. And what we're trying to do is enable as many people as possible to own an electric car, and we've done that in a very clever way with the Spring. I'm quite excited about it.
So you were saying you had to fight for 4 years.
Yeah.
So you were in the seat then as brand director.
2019, yeah.
Okay, so was that probably one of your first big challenges in the role?
Yeah, I would say so, because when you're trying to do the business model to bring a car to market, the question is effectively, well, looking at the capex, so how much is it going to cost to move the steering wheel, homologate for UK, to do that, there's a cost. What is the return on that cost, and how quickly can you get the return? And for Spring, it was super easy. The ROI is super clear. Actually, it was more a case of when is the right time to bring this car to the UK so that the standard of the product aligns closely to what UK customers would expect. And we took the decision to do that this year because it's when we had a phase change plan from an engineering perspective. It made more sense. And actually, having seen this particular product a year and a half ago, I thought it's a massive step up from the Spring that they've had in Europe, and we took the decision then to go for it.
So the car has been received really, really well.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to clearly be a success because of the price point value add that you get at that level. How do you then get that message into the retailers? Because again, we're on this sliding scale, and it is a journey.
Yeah.
And the Renault arm is leading the way for you as a brand, and as you said, you're taking the powertrains, you're taking some of the technology and the R&D into Dacia. How do you make sure that the people within Dacia have got all the necessary skills, information to mind? Because obviously at your level, that's very disconnected from what's happening at shop floor.
Yeah.
And historically, the brands and the industry has suffered because of petrol power, diesel power, and legislation changes.
I mean, it is a total step change from petrol, diesel to talking about electric cars to customers. And it's even really basic things like you're no longer talking miles per gallon. You're talking in kilowatts per hour. And it's what I'm finding speaking to our retailers and also to customers, a lot of them don't know that I'm using Spring as an example, but the sentiment I'm giving is the same for all electric cars. To fill up a Spring with electric at home, it's super cheap. It's like £2.
Yeah.
But to explain that, how does it work with kilowatt hours? What's the cost per kilowatt hour? How does that translate to miles per gallon in old money? So to communicate that in a really simple way to our network, we effectively have to explain this to customers. But it's not only that; it's the whole infrastructure around EV that is new. They're used to driving to a petrol station, plugging the thing in, and driving away. Now it's like, right, how am I going to charge it at home if I can even do that? Because, many people can't. They have to use public charging infrastructure. If I'm going to do that, what wall box do I have? Then that's a whole other story altogether. What wall box do you have? Then if I am out and about, how does that work? Do I need to have 5 different cars and all this stuff? And I think there's a perception that it's complicated. But you know yourself, right? You own an EV. It's not actually that complicated. It's just a change in thinking, isn't it? It's like,
it's 7, nearly 8 years in the making now. And like you, I would have described myself as a petrol head. I've had far too many cars. And the reality is I've put a lot of petrol and diesel into vehicles over the years, but I understand the need to move towards electrification. But I actually do it because it really makes a difference to my life in terms of cost. I get a high performance vehicle, I get loads of tech, so I love it. And my wife owns a Zoe, so we're very familiar with that. And my first EV was a Zoe when it was a 22 kilowatt hour battery. So we've lived and breathed it over like I say the last 7 or 8 years, and I get it, but there are so many people that don't get it, and some refuse to understand it because they see it as a huge step change that possibly they might view as, again, a fad. It might change, and we obviously in our time, in our careers, we will have seen diesel come in and out of fashion, and people will be worried that electrified product will have the same effects. I think, having spoken to a lot of experts in this field over the years, we need to appreciate that battery electric is going to be the primary usage and powertrain options for many vehicles, but there are other supporting factors with hydrogen and other direct influences for electrification. So I think it's how we get that communicated to people, to the customer and the end users. So therefore, the people that we employ at shop level that are communicating direct, selling the offer, selling the value add, they have to have that desire and that curiosity that you talked about earlier to want to know this information, be part of the journey, and obviously get it across.
Yep.
So thinking about, again, Dacia values down to the retailer group, which you don't always have control of, you can only advise on. What's happening in terms of the diversity of people that we see and the requirements? What are you doing, and what's one of your big passions in that space?
So, I mean, you've talked about it with some of your previous guests on other podcasts, but I think, well, I don't think I know, diversity within our industry is critical. I don't think we have such a good track record as an industry, as we were talking about earlier, you know?
Yeah.
But attracting people from diverse backgrounds, and I'm talking male, female, mainly, I think it's key because 50% of our customers are female, right? So how can we have mainly males within our showroom, and in some instances even in our head office environment? So we're looking at this really closely as a group. It's something that the board is very passionate about, and me personally, you know, I'm really passionate about this topic because ultimately I want our teams, I want my team to represent the people who are buying and utilizing our products. So I can influence that within my team at the manufacturer levels, but I know that many of our retailers are also looking at this topic incredibly closely because they see the value in it, you know, whether they're adjusting their working hour practices, their commission structures and things like this to accommodate attracting new talent into the industry. And it's starting to work slowly. We're attracting more and more females into the industry, but not quick enough, I don't think. And there's more that we can all do. There's more that we are doing, and that's, you know, even basic things like looking at how do we write our job descriptions, how do we write them as simple and clearly as possible, how do we how do we really sell the industry, because it's an exciting place to work. We've talked about loads of topics today and we've not even scratched the surface, you know. So there's place within the industry for everyone, but it's just selling that and selling it in a very easy and simple way, you know.
It's notoriously been a challenge, and my career, whilst it seems long, is relatively short in comparison to many. So 24, 25 years in and around this space, and it's generally been very male dominated. And what's more upsetting, I think, is that the more senior roles have typically been held by men. And again, you're proof of that, but in a positive way. You're doing something differently with that space you have, but it's typically held by males. And Jim Saker talked about this on an episode with me, and talked about it with Marion Whitty on the very first episode of Lead By. And diversity inclusion isn't a checklist. It's not a mandate that a corporate office has to have in order to say, right, we're doing this. It needs to be seen and believed as the true cultural essence of an organisation, to have that breadth of people, skills, gender, balance, ethnicity, disabilities, abilities. All of that is important because it brings flavour. It brings such diversity by definition.
Exactly.
That you can make decisions that you wouldn't have considered before because you've got all these viewpoints. And it's so important today because of the changes that we need to face in a very short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's critical that you're authentic about it, and you've touched on it. But you know, it's quite easy to make it a tick box exercise. But you've got to live and breathe it. And when you are, recruiting, for me, it's not about employing females just to say, oh, I've ticked a box, I've done the quota. Actually, with our HR team, what we're trying to do is put our job adverts in places that females are more likely to look. And my ambition really is very, very simple. It's not to employ females because they're female. Actually, it's to, at the very start of the recruitment journey, it's to at least have, 30, 40, 50% of applicants are females, because then at least I'm in with a chance of employing the best person.
Yes.
And if that best person happens to be a female, then great. But if all the applicant pool is guys, then guess what? I'm going to employ a guy.
The destiny's there, isn't it?
Exactly. So that's, maybe I've simplified it too much, I don't know, but very simply, it's about attracting females into the organisation and more widely the industry, and then ensuring that they have a clear progression path through the organisation, so that we don't end up with just guys in leadership positions. And that's exactly what Julia Mear's trying to do with the Automotive 30% Club.
For sure. And if you don't mind me saying, we were talking off camera that you faced a few challenges in recruitment trying to attract that audience or a different audience from just guys. And as a guy yourself, that must be quite difficult to analyse. So what are you going to do next in order to make sure that you can find that relevant audience? What's on the cards for you?
So what we try and do is not try and do too much, but what we do it well. So I've touched on earlier, we've totally revised how we write our job descriptions. We try and keep them really accessible, easy to read, and all of that stuff. On top, personally, I'm trying to go out to educational institutions, particularly universities, and talk about automotive industry and how exciting it is, and the things that you can do within the industry, from marketing to sales to even apprenticeships within the retailers. So I'm trying to go out and speak to these people to develop the next generation of people who are going to join the industry. And then finally, it's looking at, well, where are we advertising these roles? Because okay, fine, you whack it on LinkedIn, great, or Indeed, but how can we be a bit more creative about this? Can we send them out to our retailers, and perhaps somebody in after sales thinks, oh, I wouldn't mind being a product manager for Duster or something,
Yes.
So it's looking about where we're advertising the roles, as well as how we advertise the roles, but also trying to get it out into our communities to sell the industry, because it's a cool place to work.
Yeah, and you're becoming an inspiration for the brand, because again, you're more accessible than a lot of managing directors, and you're as I said earlier, your style is more grounded, and you don't carry an ego, and some do. Unfortunately, it comes with the territory in a lot of cases, but you don't appear to carry that, and it's something that you keep close to your heart. So when you're going out to inspire those next round of people, whether it be leaders or just those in the general workforce, you've talked about these attributes, but what do you want them to see? So thinking about some of the learning points and maybe even failures that you've faced.
I'm sure there is. There must be.
Anything stand out? You think, that was a really big learning curve?
I mean, maybe it's a bit cliche, to be honest, but the most obvious one for me is COVID, because I don't think I wouldn't call it a failure, because everybody was impacted by COVID, right? But for sure, it was one of the steepest learning curves that I've had to go on personally. And to elaborate on that, COVID came along. We were talking about, well, what happens with our import centres, what happens with the business, how do we manage it all through that transition? And overnight, we're furloughing staff because they weren't needed, we weren't selling cars, showrooms were closed. But life still went on. So if I talk about my team, the majority of them were furloughed. So all of a sudden, I'm doing everybody's job effectively, because we kept a really core team within Renault Group. And what that meant was I had to learn very quickly, what does a product manager do? How does a product manager do the job? How does Marcoms work? How does, I was really in everybody's job, not to the level of detail that they're doing it, because we weren't, the volumes weren't flying. But I really had to get into the detail of their jobs. And it gave me a real appreciation, actually, for what they do on a day-to-day basis. So, I go from leadership, manage a team, to all of a sudden, oh crap, how do I update this Excel spreadsheet on this product to do this thing because somebody in the factory needs it for this date? It was
dealing with all the supply all the supply constraints and
so
stuff.
it was quite cool actually, but it was a massive learning curve, because there was no one there to do it, so I had to do it myself. But I think to answer the question more generally, something that I always try and do is I always try and be outside of my comfort zone.
Okay.
And for me, when I'm not, that's quite a strong indicator that I need to either put myself more outside my comfort zone and maybe take more risks and do more things, or move on. And for sure, COVID, it was almost like a forced outside of your comfort zone.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of successful leaders take that value, which is step outside the comfort zone, push and take risks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because without that, you become complacent. And when you become complacent, you're not challenging yourself. You're not asking for feedback because you know something too well.
Yeah, exactly.
So what you're doing is basically putting yourself in that position of whatever role it is or in life, and getting feedback that helps you think, right, I can validate whether I'm doing it well or not, where I need to influence change. And that seems to be a very, very common thing. And again, across the leaders we've spoken to in the other episodes, no one sat back on their laurels. They're always pushing the boundaries and challenging themselves. And the word that you've used and many others use, I use it, stay curious.
Yeah, exactly.
So referencing back to what you were saying earlier, if you stay curious and you want to be relevant, you have to do things differently and put yourself in a place of slight discomfort, if not quite a bit of discomfort. So for the future then, 9 people at the moment. We talked earlier about you want to try and keep the team fairly small and keep it manageable, where you keep the essence of what Dacia is all about. What do you think are the biggest changes yet to be faced with your brand and the way you're going to lead the brand as we head towards this new era that we've talked about with electrification and other requirements from the government? What's going to happen there, and how are you going to manage that?
Well, I think the brand is really well placed actually, because the cost of cars are doing this. People's salaries are not doing this.
No.
So actually to and for those who are listening, I'm doing an increasing trajectory animation with my hand. So the cost of cars is going up. People's salaries are not going up at the pace of the cost of cars. And we genuinely believe that there will be a point where people will say, I'm not spending that on that, So in a way for Dacia, we're waiting to people to come to us, because people have to start making decisions. It's do I want to go on holiday? Do I want to take my kids swimming, karate, and all the stuff that comes with that? Or do I want to spend 500 quid a month on my car? So people will start taking decisions, and that's where Dacia becomes interesting to them. I think the major thing is having people within the team who are comfortable with uncertainty, because there's people out there who they love a routine, they want to know what's coming at them and what the day looks like. But within automotive, you have to be comfortable with uncertainty, and you have to be comfortable with complexity. So it's supporting the team through that. They're not on their own. We're going through that together. So having people within the team who are comfortable with that is critical. The team will inevitably grow. As the volumes grow, as the brand becomes more successful, we'll have more people within the team. So the challenge that I'm going to have is making sure that the communication stays free and people are clear with what each of the other are doing. We might lose a bit of the agility with just the nature of teams growing, right? You lose a bit of agility, but it's my job to try and retain that and to make sure that we do stay quick, because for me, that's a real competitive advantage of the brand that we need to keep.
Yes, and I think we know that there are threats always facing the industry because of the speed at which things come at us, and ultimately the technology that's evolving. At ezeni, we spend a lot of our time supporting and coaching companies, automotive clients as well, in the space of sort of behavioral science and psychometrics, and trying to get the gel of the right people in place, because you can teach someone to sell a car, you can teach someone to ask about requirements through after sales or whatever the role might be, but you can't always teach the attitude. And we've talked about how important that is in the Dacia recipe, because you've got to have people that are curious, that are empowered to deal with customers and get the value of what the brand is doing. Have you had the experience of using some of the sciences, or do you have any passions in that area around behavioural stuff that works? Have you ever tried that stuff?
No, I haven't actually. Okay. But more and more I'm looking at it, and I recently discovered something the other day, which is called the paralysis of choice, right? And the analogy is you go into Subway and try and order a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, I'm as a brand, we're trying to remove a lot of that paralysis of choice, because buying a car is freaking complicated.
Yeah.
So the more that we can make that as easy and seamless as possible, the better. So if you do want a ham sandwich or a car without a million and one questions, it's our job to try and make that as simple as possible. So I'm looking at that a minute.
Yeah.
How can I?
It's a great analogy.
How can I put that into the car buying journey? What the rabbit hole that I haven't gone down though is, training, learning, development at retailer space. I've not quite gone down that rabbit hole yet.
And I guess at brand level, there's only so much you can do. You can set the tone, and you can mandate things through retailer instructions, but ultimately, whatever the retailer group name is, they'll have their ways of doing certain aspects of the role.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily directly influence the outcome, but you can set that standard, which you are definitely doing at top level, and which will cascade into the products, into the essence of the brand.
I mean, with the retailers, they ultimately have to believe in what we're doing, right? Because they're investing their money in facilities, in stock, in staff. And I think with Renault Group, we have a really strong proposition, with Dacia being at the value end of the market, Renault being at the technology, electric, forward-thinking end of the market, and we also have, Alpine, which is sports guard, avant-garde technology. So as a Renault Group proposition, it's pretty strong to the retailers, and it's ultimately them who are putting their money where their mouth is. And the magic of Dacia specifically is the brand positioning is super clear. We're not competing with each other within the group. We're all very clearly defined. And for many retailers, it's a pretty easy investment decision,
Our time is going to come to an end very shortly. We've had a very good conversation, but there's a couple of little things I desperately want to get from you, really, because I think it's so important based on everything you've said. If we were to go back to the very beginning of your career, what would you like to have known then that you know now that would be really powerful in, again, carving out a career in leadership or being an influencer in big decisions?
I think it's don't be afraid to bring your contribution. I see it with junior staff today. They come to these meetings and they sit there, they listen attentively, and you can see that they've got value to add, right? And my advice is always add that value, because that is ultimately why you're there and why you've been put into that position. Perhaps looking back, I was maybe one of these who was there, like, just trying to take it all in, and maybe had something to say, but was maybe a bit nervous of what people thought. And, I don't want to look stupid. But more and more, I've punched that out of myself, right? Because you want people to be putting their thoughts, ideas, opinions on the table, because otherwise it's missed opportunities, and you might have something really valuable to bring. So, it doesn't matter if you've just joined the organisation or you're in a new team or a new position. I think it's always important that if you've got something to say and you think it will add value, you say it, and don't, you might look stupid, you might not look stupid, so what? Just, if you think it's valuable, it's not going to be stupid at all, and you should put it on the table. So I think that's the main piece of advice I would give, to be honest. It's always, if you've got something to say it and bring your contribution, and always try and add your value,
Yeah, you got to believe in yourself, and ultimately, if the recruitment is done in the right way as an organisation, you're there for a reason. You're going to add value. There's something that's been discovered or seen in the personality that means that you're there to be part of the collective and shape and influence the future. So if there's anything I could take and I can share to our audiences now as a summary, I think it is that being authentic, staying curious to information, and that's voyage of self-discovery, and don't be afraid of taking risks. So, Luke, I want to say thank you, firstly, for taking some time out of your busy schedule. We know that it's a busy time for Dacia right now. I wish you the very best, and the team, with all your amazing products for the future.
No, that's great. Thank you for having me along. Thanks.
Thank you, Luke. Cheers.